Welcome everybody. I'm Dr. Jean-Marc Assaad, clinical psychologist, and welcome to our next episode of the Happiness Masterclass series. And today we're going to talk about unlocking peak performance. And peak performance in every aspect of your life, be it academics, sports, work, life, you name it. I'm going to try to show you a couple of techniques today that'll help you get peak performance in all of those areas. So the first thing I want to ask all of you is, have you ever wondered why sometimes you perform at your best under pressure and other times you just crumble and you can't do it? Why? Well, it's not a mystery anymore. It's science. And I'm going to explain to you today why this happens, and in knowing why it happens, what you could do to stay at peak performance. So we're really going to learn about the impact of stress, of worrying, being over aroused, and how this impacts your peak performance, and how you could use these techniques to unlock your true potential. Again, whether it be in academics, sports, work, life, you name it, this is a universal law. And it's the law called the Yerkes-Dodson law. And this is really spectacular. There are not many laws in psychology, but this is one of them. And this was discovered over 100 years ago in 1908. And it's very valid today. And what does it tell us? Well, let's look at this carefully. We have over here arousal on the x-axis, and we have your performance on the y-axis. And notice what happens. We have low arousal, and by arousal we mean stress, anxiety, focus. We're talking about the fight or flight, attention, right? So arousal, stress. When it's really low, well, you're super relaxed, almost sleepy. Doesn't really bother you, right? Well, then there'll be very poor performance, very weak performance. Now, as this worry, stress, attention, right, the flight or flight, the sympathetic nervous system, as it activates a little bit more, well, you start increasing your attention and your interest. And also happens to the performance. It starts to increase until what you get to this, this zone over here, this peak performance zone. And now here's the tragic part. What happens when your arousal, your stress, your worry continues to increase? Well, look what happens over here. Your performance begins to diminish. And the more anxious you get, the more worried you get, the more stressed you get, the more arousal you have, it interferes with your thinking process, with your abilities, and then you get lower and lower performance, and you get to weak performance yet again. So we've seen this in every area of people's lives. So this is standard. And what we're going to try to focus today is on how to get to that beautiful Goldilocks zone of not too much stress, not too little stress, but just have it just right, just enough arousal to keep us at that peak performance. So how could we do that? Well, there's many ways. There's many ways to help us maintain, our attention, our arousal, our stress, our worries at peak performance levels. One major I want to talk about today is our inner dialogue. So what we tell ourselves while we're performing, while we're trying to accomplish things. And to help control how we talk to ourselves, our inner dialogue, I want to talk to you about the difference between process goals and result goals. And there's a very easy example, but I want to really distinguish this because it's such a key concept, and it's so easy to forget when we're in the moment. So you really want to ingrain this inside of us. A result goal, for example, is getting an A, right? Getting 85%, 90% on exams. That's the result. That's what we're striving for, the result. But you can't just get an A, right? You can't just get 90%. You have to do stuff to get there. And the doing stuff, we call that the process goals. So the process goals are the steps you have to take in order to get to the result that you want. So if you focus on, for example, studying 2 hours a day, every day for an exam, you focus on that process, well, it's not stressful because you're doing what you got to do. And then trust that the result will follow. The more you study, the more you work at it, the better your grades will be. So that's the process goal. Versus, always talking to yourself, that inner dialogue, and talking about, to yourself, but I gotta get an A. If I don't get an A, I'm gonna flunk out of school. If I flunk out of school, it's gonna be a disaster. Well, that focusing on the results only leads us to get more and more aroused, more and more worried, more and more stressed, because there's nothing immediately achievable, right? There's a process to get to there. Well, if you overly focus on the result goal, just leads to too much over arousal, then lowered performance. And there's many examples, and I really want to spend some time going over these examples because, again, when we could talk to ourselves and know the difference between the result goals and the process goals, we're better able to manage our anxiety and stress about it. We're better able to stay in that peak performance zone. So examples in academics, I just mentioned it, right? Your result goal, get 85% on in your final grade. Process goals, for example, study 2 hours daily. In sports, it could be win the gold medal. Right? That's the result. Well, to get there, the process would be, practice your passes, practice your shots, right? Practice, hours and hours before the game. Let's say at work, our result goal would be, for example, you have to complete a huge project, before a certain deadline. That's the result. Well, the process goal would be, well, among many, right? But one process goal would be, for example, schedule regular meetings, and get feedback on your progress. If you focus on that process goals, those little steps to take to get to the big result, well, then you're not going to be overly stressed and worried about it. You trust the process, the results will follow. So many life goals, right? Like for example, right? Get my boyfriend to do the dishes more often, right? Well, the process goal could be focus on assertive communication strategies. Instead of getting, because, and I do a lot of, couple counseling, relationship counseling. And when, one partner is not doing something that the other partner wants, they get overly agitated and upset. And then in the moment, they're so angry, so upset about it, they're not able to perform properly. And the performance over here is to be able to assertively communicate your needs. But if you focus on the process instead and you practice assertive communication, you don't wait for the big, arguments, but you practice it, on a daily basis. And when it comes time to something that's really concerning, something really upsetting, you have so much practice under your belt, you're able to keep a calm head and communicate assertively, positively, and get to the results that you want. And there's so many life goals. Like, for example, you want better fitness, right? You want better fitness, but you're overly obsessed on these results. Like, for example, you get into your head, which is such a bad result goal, but say, I gotta lose weight, I gotta lose some pounds, which is such a stressful, negative type of result goal. But if you focus on the process, which is, for example, walk 30 minutes a day, or do 10 minutes of cardio per day, or eat half of my plates, every meal, half of it is fruits and vegetables at every meal, whatever that is, focus on the process goal, well then the health follows, the improved fitness follows. You don't have to be overly obsessive about those results, which only leads to stress and discouragement, and to lower performance. So it's all about the Yerkes-Dodson law. So if you focus too much on the results, too much arousal, less performance, less able to get on the results. So isn't it a paradox? It's a paradox. If you let go of focusing on the results and you're at peace, when they say, result, no result, I'm going to focus on the process because I trust that if I follow the process, I get to the results, well, then you'll land over here in the zone of peak performance. So this explains many phenomenon, right? Like, for example, why do we blank out sometimes during exams? Or if you're at work and you have to, give a presentation and you forget everything you had to say, right? Or you prepare for a meeting, you want to speak to your boss, and then you get there, you forget all the arguments, all the great points you wanted to give. Or if you're, at home and there's something you want to talk about with your partner, and you rehearse it in your mind, but then when you get there and you're just too stressed out, and it doesn't come out right, and you get angry or upset, or you blank out. It was because of the Yerkes-Dodson law, right? Over anxiety, over arousal, right, actually causes our cognitive resources to become overwhelmed. At least either poor recall when you have to do an exam, right? Or it short circuits cognitive abilities when you have to use your higher function, higher abilities to navigate complex situations. So you really want to try, and again, it's one technique about many. There's many, many techniques, but one of them is focus on your inner dialogue and tell yourself, I will focus on the process instead of the result. To try to stay calm and try to stay at that peak performance zone over here. That zone of optimal performance. So I want to share with you a few more methods. So we talked about your inner dialogue. And we talked about telling yourself, focus on the process, not on the results. But again, sometimes in the heat of the moment, it's hard. But always ask yourself, is my inner dialogue, is what I'm telling myself, is it helping me or is it hindering me? You have to tell yourself, I'm going to speak to myself like I would a good friend, someone I care for. Speak to yourself with self-compassion, in other words, right? It's the difference between a good coach and a bad coach. A good coach and a bad coach, right? What's the difference? The difference is a bad coach will yell, right, or speak negatively to the player and have them focus on the results. You're not scoring enough. You're not winning, right? We're losing points, which only leads to impaired performance. Versus a good coach would have the player focus on the process and say, look, doesn't matter what the score is. Doesn't matter if you're losing right now. What you want to do is focus on what you know what to do. You've practiced your passes. You've practiced your shots. Focus on that. The results will follow. And that's how you help people get into the flow, right? You've heard about the concept of the flow, right? Concepts of, over here, the being in the zone, right? Concepts of peak performance. All of that is, they're all slightly different definitions, but we're talking about the same thing. Talking about staying in this zone or staying in a flow, staying in peak performance, where you will attain what you're trying to attain. So this is, again, something that we teach Olympians. So when we have Olympians and they get a good sports psychologist, we don't tell them, when you're at the start line, think of the gold medal. And don't forget, you sacrificed 4 years of your life to get here. If you don't win a medal, you wasted all those years. So you better get a medal. Are you ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3. No, you wouldn't say that to the Olympian. They'll be so stressed. They won't be focused on the process, on the actual running or the jumping or the passing or the scoring. They'll be focused on the result. Their odds will be too high. There'll be impaired performance. So Olympic level mental preparation, right, involves telling the Olympian, don't think about the results. Of course you want the gold medal, but this is no longer time to think about it, right? Because overly focused, like you could dream about it before or maybe weeks before, but now you're competing. Now this is the time to perform. Don't think about that grade you want to get. Don't think about the A plus. Don't think about how you want, your partner to do what you want them to do. Don't think about that amazing presentation. You have to, shine and give the best presentation ever at work. If you think about those things, you get to this side of the curve and you got lowered performance. So think like an Olympian. Don't focus on the result. Focus on the process. And that's how you stay in the zone, in the flow. That's how you get optimal performance. So how do we end? We end with trust the process. We've heard this many times before, but now you know the science behind it. And remember that people have been applying this for over 100 years. This works. It's scientifically proven. So please try it out yourselves. So I'd love to hear from you. So please write in the comments. Maybe there's been a time in your life where you had a big, game or a big test, and you were in the zone, and you were really on the ball. You're able to perform well. Tell us about that experience. How did you get to that, right? Or share with us what are some big result goals you want to accomplish, but what is the process you're going to focus on? Like, for example, you want better fitness, right? Well, walk 30 minutes a day, or do cardio, a few times a week. Or you want to get an A plus on the exam, right? That's the result goal. Well, focus on studying 30 minutes a day, or an hour a day, or 2 hours a day. Whatever it is, we'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much for watching. And if you're interested in finding out more about the science of how to live life with more happiness, well, please stay tuned for more in the Happiness Masterclass series. Please like, subscribe, share, and if you're interested in finding out about more techniques on how to speak to yourself in a way that helps us versus hindering us, well, please go on our websites, either PsyVitalitï.ca or PsyMontréal.com. Click on our blog section and go to the blog category, Weathering the Storm. And you're going to find some very interesting techniques on how to talk to yourself in a way that leads us to have more self-compassion towards ourselves and lead us to live our lives to our fullest. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you at the next Happiest Masterclass video. Take care, everyone.